Welcome to Griffonomics.
It is good to be back.
Today is Monday, February 16th, 2026. If you have been watching the headlines, or, your portfolio for that matter, you know the world feels, well, it feels tense.
That's a mild way of putting it.
It is. The geopolitical temperature is definitely rising, supply chains are getting tighter, and the entire defense sector is under a microscope. But usually when we talk about defense, we're talking about the titans.
The Lockheeds, the Raytheons, the Northrops, the household names.
Exactly. The ones with the Super Bowl commercials. But today, we are zooming in, way in. We're looking at a company that's much smaller, but sits right at a choke point of this entire global tension. We're talking about LightPath Technologies, ticker symbol, LPTH.
It's one of the most interesting, I think, case studies in the market right now, because if you looked at LightPath 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, you would have seen a sleepy penny stock component maker.
Just making parts.
Just making parts. They made lenses.
Yeah.
Small pieces of glass.
And today?
Today, they are a critical node in Western defense architecture. They've undergone a complete metamorphosis. They aren't just a glass shop anymore. They're what you might call a technology sovereign.
That is the mission for this deep dive, then. We're going to dissect what the sources are calling LightPath's inflection point. This isn't just about good earnings, is it?
No, not at all. It's about a fundamental shift in what the company is.
We're looking at a company with revenue up 120%, a backlog that's getting close to $100 million, and a pivot from selling, $10 lenses to selling $50,000 weapon systems.
It's a staggering transformation. And we're going to answer the big question. Is this the ultimate sovereign defensive play? Is this the stock you own when the global supply chain, stops playing nice?
So let's start there with this concept of metamorphosis. The research notes we looked at keep referring to LightPath 1.0 versus LightPath 3.0. It sounds like a software update, but we're talking about physical hardware here. So break this down for us. What was LightPath 1.0?
To really understand where they are, you have to understand where they came from. And you can think of LightPath 1.0, and you could even throw 2.0 in there as the commodity era.
The commodity era.
Right. For decades, this company was a component manufacturer. They specialized in precision molded optics, basically really high-quality glass lenses used in, everything from industrial tools to basic sensors.
Okay, so they made the glass, like the little lens in a laser pointer or maybe barcode scanner at the grocery store.
That's exactly it. But in that model, you are at the absolute bottom of the food chain. You're selling a lens for maybe $5, maybe $50 if it's a really fancy one.
And you're competing with massive factories in Asia, I assume.
The whole world. Margins are razor thin because you're selling a raw ingredient. You are selling the flour, not the cake.
And that is a tough, tough business to be in. Volume might be high, but you have zero pricing power. If you raise your prices by 10 cents, the customer just walks away.
Precisely. The customer just buys their lens from a competitor in Shenzhen. It is a classic race to the bottom on price. But LightPath 3.0, which is where they are today, is a completely different animal.
Okay.
They've shifted to being a vertically integrated systems provider.
Vertically integrated systems provider. That is a lot of syllables. Let's unpack that. What does that actually look like on the factory floor? What's different?
It means they don't just shape the glass anymore. They own the entire process. And I mean the entire process. They melt the raw chemicals to create the glass material itself. We'll get into that. It's the black diamond tech. Yeah. Then they mold the lens. They build the metal housing it goes into. They assemble the electronics.
Wow.
And thanks to their recent acquisitions, they even write the software that processes the image from that lens.
So instead of selling a single lens for $50, what are they selling now?
They are selling complete thermal camera assemblies. The average selling price, the ASP, has jumped from $50 to around $500 for modules and for complete systems. I mean, you're talking $50,000 to $100,000 per unit.
I just need to pause on that. From $50 to $50,000, that's not just a price increase. That is a change in the fundamental nature of the company. It's a different species of business.
It changes the entire economic model. And the data from their Q2 2026 report, which just came out, it proves it. This isn't just marketing fluff.
The numbers back it up.
They do. Their revenue in the assemblies and modules segment, that's the new stuff, the high-value stuff, it didn't just grow, it exploded. It's up 741% year over year, hitting $7.2 million for the quarter.
741%. That is not a typo.
No typo. It completely validates the strategy. They aren't fighting for pennies in the commodity market anymore. They're capturing the value of the entire wedding cake, to go back to that analogy.
Instead of just selling the flower, they're selling the tiered cake, frosted, delivered, and set up at the venue.
The whole 9 yards. And they're getting paid for it.
I want to dig into the how of this.
Yeah.
You mentioned they own the glass melting process itself. This seems to be the secret sauce. The sources talk a lot about black diamond. It sounds like a credit card levels or maybe a ski run, but it's actually a specific type of material.
This is the absolute heart of the LightPath 3.0 advantage. And to understand black diamond, you really have to understand the problem it solves. Historically, if you wanted to build a thermal camera, night vision, heat-seeking missiles, that sort of thing, you needed a specific element.
Yeah.
You needed germanium.
Germanium.
Yeah.
Element 22 on the periodic table. I remember this from high school chemistry, vaguely. The metalloid, right?
Correct. And germanium is the gold standard for infrared optics because it's transparent to heat. Glass-like regular window glass blocks heat. That's why you can't use a normal camera lens for thermal imaging.
It's opaque to that wavelength.
Exactly. Germanium acts like glass for heat waves. It lets them pass right through. The problem is germanium is a mined mineral, and geologically it is not evenly distributed around the globe.
Let me guess where most of it is found.
Russia and China.
Of course. It's always Russia and China.
And that brings us to what the CEO, Sam Rubin, calls the China gift. He uses this phrase a lot. It refers to the export restrictions China placed on germanium and gallium a couple of years ago.
Right, I remember this. It was a retaliatory move in the trade wars. It felt like a warning shot across the bow of the entire Western defense industry.
It was a stranglehold. China effectively said, nice defense industry you have there. It'd be a shame if you couldn't get the glass you need to build your missiles.
And the U.S. imports?
What?
Almost all of its germanium?
Practically all of it.
Right.
Suddenly, the Pentagon had this massive uh-oh moment where they realized that their two biggest geopolitical adversaries controlled the raw material needed to defend against them.
That seems like a massive strategic oversight.
Yeah.
How did we let that happen?
Efficiency. For 30 years, the global economy prioritized the cheapest supply chain over the most secure one. It made sense at the time, but that era is over. It was a glaring vulnerability.
So where does LightPath come in?
That's where they stepped in with black diamond. Black diamond is a chalcogenide-based glass.
Chalcogenide. Okay, that is a word I am going to struggle with today. Define that for us, please.
It's not as complex as it sounds. It comes from the Greek word chalkos, which means ore. It's a group of chemical elements, sulfur, selenium, tellurium. When you mix them in the right way, you get a glass that acts just like germanium. It lets heat through, but it has completely different physical properties.
And crucially,
LightPath makes it synthetically in their Orlando facility.
so it's not mined. We don't have to dig a hole in the ground in some hostile country.
The raw elements are sourced, of course, but the glass itself is created in a lab environment. They don't need a mine in China. They mix the chemicals, melt them down in these specialized furnaces, and create the glass right there in Florida.
American-made infrared glass.
100%.
Okay, so it solves the supply chain problem. That alone is huge. But usually when you buy the alternative product, you take a hit on performance. Is this like buying the generic cereal that gets soggy too fast? Are we trading security for quality here?
That's the fascinating part. In many applications, it's actually better than germanium.
How so? Better in what way?
First, it's lighter. Germanium is heavy. It's a dense metal. Chalcogenide glass is much less dense, and if you're building a drone or a missile, every single gram counts.
Sure. Lighter lens means the missile can fly further or carry a bigger warhead or more fuel.
That's one. Second, and this is a huge one from a manufacturing standpoint, it's moldable.
Moldable, like plastic. You can just press it into a shape.
Exactly. Germanium is a hard crystal. To make a lens out of germanium, you have to take a big block of it and then grind it down with diamond tools and polish it for hours and hours. It's a very slow, expensive, and wasteful process.
It sounds like an artisanal craft.
It basically is.
Yeah.
But black diamond can be precision molded. You heat it up and press it into shape, almost like pressing a vinyl record.
Which implies you can mass produce it much, much faster.
Much faster and much cheaper at scale. You aren't relying on an artisan to polish a lens. You are relying on a highly repeatable machine process to press it. But there's another technical advantage. Multispectral imaging.
Unpack that term for me. Multispectral.
So thermal imaging isn't just one thing. There are different colors of heat, if you will. There's mid-wave infrared and long-wave infrared, or MWIR and LWIR.
Okay.
Traditional germanium lenses usually work really well in one of those specific wavelength bands. If you wanted to see both, say, to track a hot missile plume versus a cooler vehicle engine, you often needed two separate cameras or a very complex heavy lens assembly.
Which adds cost and weight.
A lot of cost and weight. Black diamond allows for color correction across multiple bands. You can see different heat signatures, both mid-wave and long-wave, through a single, simpler lens.
So you can replace 2 or 3 lenses with one black diamond lens.
Exactly. It reduces size, weight, and power, what the defense industry calls SWaP-C, the C being cost. So the military gets a lighter missile, a cheaper missile, and a missile that doesn't rely on China.
That explains the interest. It's the trifecta.
Mm.
Better, cheaper, and secure. But, interest is one thing, law is another. I saw mentions of the NDAA in the notes. How does that play into all this?
The National Defense Authorization Act. It's the massive bill that sets the defense budget every year, but it also sets policy. And the recent versions of the NDAA have a very specific mandate.
Which is?
The Department of Defense must eliminate Chinese and Russian optical glass from its supply chain by 2030.
2030 is right around the corner in defense procurement terms.
It is basically tomorrow. If you're a company like Raytheon and you're designing a missile today that will enter service in 2028 and fly until 2040, you cannot put Chinese glass in it. It's illegal. You have to find a U.S. source.
And LightPath is that source.
They are currently the only significant U.S. producer of this type of moldable infrared glass. They have, almost by default, become the compliance solution.
That is a powerful moat, a regulatory moat. You aren't just competing on specs. You are competing on legality.
The question for the prime contractors becomes, are you legally allowed to be in this missile? And that creates a very, very short list of suppliers. LightPath is at the top of that list.
Okay, let's pivot to the financials, because having a great story is nice, but we need to see if they're actually making money. The story stock graveyard is full of companies with great tech that couldn't balance a checkbook.
Absolutely.
They just released their Q2 2026 results. Walk us through the numbers. What did we see?
The headline revenue was a record, $16.4 million for the quarter. That is up 120% year over year.
Why?
And they beat analyst expectations by nearly $1.5 million, so a very strong beat.
Beat and raise. Always good to see. That shows management has a handle on guidance. But looking at the bottom line, I see a net loss of $9.4 million.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
I have to. You tell me this company is exploding with growth, but they lost nearly $10 million in 3 months. That looks terrible on paper. A casual investor sees that and runs for the hills.
It does if you stop reading at the headline.
Yeah.
But this is a deep dive, right? So we have to look at the footnotes. That loss is what I would call profitability nuance.
Explain the nuance. Where did that money go? Did they, set it on fire?
No, not at all. $7.6 million of that loss was a non-cash charge related to the G5 earnout.
Break that down for me. What is an earnout?
So when LightPath bought the company G5 Infrared, which was the key to their camera system strategy, the deal structure included a clause. Basically, it says, we will pay you X amount now, and if the business you sold us performs really well in the future, we will pay you more later.
Right. It's a bonus for the sellers if they didn't sell you a lemon.
It aligns the incentives.
Yeah.
The sellers of G5 want the company to do well so they get their bonus. Well, G5 isn't just doing well, they are crushing it. They are performing better than expected. Because they're doing so well, the accounting rules say LightPath has to book the liability for those future payments now. They have to recognize that they will owe this money down the line.
So let me get this straight. Because the subsidiary they bought is too successful, LightPath has to record a multi-million-dollar loss on its income statement.
Effectively, yes. It's what you could call the penalty of success. But
Right.
crucially, it is a non-cash charge. They didn't write a check for $7.6 million yesterday. It's an accounting entry that reflects future obligations based on current overperformance. It's a good problem to have.
Okay, so if we strip out that accounting noise, the success penalty, as you call it, is the business actually making money from its operations?
Yes. The metric you have to watch here is adjusted EBITDA. That strips out the non-cash charges and the one-time fees. And for the second consecutive quarter, adjusted EBITDA was positive. It was $0.6 million.
So they are operationally profitable.
They are. They are paying their bills from the money they make selling products.
That's a huge distinction, isn't it? They aren't burning cash just to keep the lights on. They're self-sustaining from an operational point of view.
Correct. In fact, they have a massive pile of cash. They did a capital raise, about $65 million, back in December 2025. Their total cash position right now is $73.6 million.
For a small cap company, $70+ million is a war chest. Why do they need that much if they're profitable? Why dilute shareholders if you don't need the money to survive?
And management has been very explicit about this. This is not survival cash. This is speed cash.
Seed cash, I like that.
They know they have this window of opportunity, the China gift, and they need to sprint. They are expanding factories, buying machinery, and actively looking for more M&A targets. They are essentially buying time.
They want to capture as much of this market as possible before the giants, the FLIRs and Coherents of the world, can figure out a workaround to the germanium problem.
Exactly. If you move slow in this environment, the giants wake up and crush you. If you move fast, you become the giant. They're using that cash to build capacity so they can say yes to every single order that comes in the door.
Okay, let's talk about what they're building with that cash. The backlog. This is section 4 of our outline, and honestly, this is where the rubber meets the road. Revenue is the rearview mirror. Backlog is the windshield.
The backlog is the crystal ball. It tells you what revenue is already locked in for the future. And the backlog hit a record $97.8 million. That's up 162% year over year.
Nearly $100 million. That's incredible. And we established earlier, this isn't just piles of cheap $5 lenses.
No, this is the good stuff. Over 2/3 of that backlog is high-margin systems and cameras. But let's name names. Who is buying this stuff? Because the quality of the customer matters just as much as the quantity of the order, right?
Absolutely. So who are the whales here?
The biggest whale in the portfolio is Lockheed Martin. LightPath is the sole source supplier for the infrared seeker in the NGSRI.
NGSRI. That's the next generation short-range interceptor.
In plain English, it is the replacement for the Stinger missile.
The Stinger.
Yeah.
The shoulder-fired missile that's been in every war movie since the 80s, the one they used to great effect in Afghanistan, the one that's been so critical in Ukraine.
The very same. The Stinger is a legend, but it's old technology. The Army is finally replacing it. Lockheed is building the new version, and LightPath's black diamond optics are the eye of that new missile.
I want to pause on that phrase, sole source. What does that actually mean in a defense contract? Does it just mean they're the current supplier, or is it stronger than that?
It means there is no plan B. LightPath is written into the blueprints. If Lockheed wants to build that missile, they must buy the assembly from LightPath. There is no other vendor qualified to provide it.
And once a missile is certified?
It stays certified. The military hates changing components in a live weapon system. It requires retesting, requalification. It costs millions and takes years. So once LightPath is designed in, they are likely there for the life of the program.
We're talking 10, maybe 20 years of recurring revenue from a single program.
That's the goal.
So what's the dollar value on something like that? Because being on a famous missile is cool, but does it pay?
The sources we looked at estimate the Stinger replacement alone is a potential $50 million to $100 million annual revenue opportunity once full production hits. That's expected around 2027.
Just that one contract is bigger than their entire historical annual revenue.
Precisely. That one program fundamentally transforms the company from a financial perspective, and that's just the Army.
You mentioned the Navy as well in the outline. The SPEAR program.
SPEIR, yes. This is a partnership with L3Harris. LightPath is supplying the long-range cooled cameras for this. The SPEAR system is basically a 360-degree thermal eye for Navy destroyers. It provides complete situational awareness.
What does that mean in practice? Situational awareness, what is it actually doing?
Imagine you're the commander of a destroyer in the Red Sea. You have threats coming at you from everywhere. Small suicide boats, drones, cruise missiles. The SPEAR system uses these advanced thermal cameras to spot those threats automatically day or night through fog or smoke.
And it alerts the crew.
It does more than that. It tells the ship's combat system, incoming threat, bearing 270, moving at 30 knots. It's the ship's survival instinct.
And that program is ramping up.
It's moving toward what's called low-rate initial production, or LRIP. So again, this is high-value, critical hardware. They aren't selling a lens for a barcode scanner. They are selling the eyes of a warship.
So we have Army missiles, Navy destroyers, and I saw border security on the list.
That's the Elbit Systems contract. LightPath provides the camera systems for the consolidated tower and surveillance equipment. Just think of those high-tech surveillance towers you see along the border.
Right, the ones that look like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Those are the ones. They're expecting over 1,000 new towers to be built, and it's an IDIQ contract that's indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity.
Which is government speak for, we're going to keep buying these for a long, long time.
It is. It creates a nice, steady baseline of recurring revenue that smooths out the lumpiness you sometimes get with the big, milestone-based defense contracts.
It really seems like they have covered the traditional domains of warfare. But we have to talk about the new domains. Section 5. Drones and space. The war in Ukraine has completely changed the way everyone thinks about drones. It's not just big predators anymore, is it?
Not at all. It proved that cheap, disposable drones, FPV or first-person view drones, are the future of infantry warfare. They're basically flying grenades with cameras.
And LightPath is playing in that sandbox.
They are, but there's a specific problem that they're trying to solve. Right now, if you buy an FPV drone off the shelf, where do the parts come from?
China. It's all DJI.
Exactly. The motors, the controllers, and especially the cameras, it's almost all DJI components. And if you want to build a swarm of American drones for the U.S. military, you cannot have Chinese eyes in them. You just can't.
It's a massive security risk. You can't have a situation where the enemy can potentially turn off your drones remotely, or even worse, see what you're seeing.
That's the nightmare scenario. So LightPath is building the American eye. They've partnered with a company called Unusual Machines and made a strategic investment in Ondas. The whole goal is to put black diamond glass into American-made FPV drones.
They want to be the default sensor.
They want to be the standard optical sensor for the Blue UAS list. That's the approved list of drones for the U.S. government.
That's a volume play then. Missiles are high value, but relatively low volume. Drones are lower value per unit, but you're talking about massive volume.
Exactly. It diversifies the portfolio beautifully. And the second prong of their drone strategy is counter-UAS, or CUAS.
Right. If everyone else has drones, you need a way to spot their drones coming at you.
And LightPath supplies the thermal cameras for the Air Force's sewer system.
Sewer? That's an evocative name.
It's an unfortunate acronym, I believe, but a very effective system. Its job is to detect incoming drone swarms so you can shoot them down, because a small drone swarm is cold, relatively speaking.
It doesn't have a big jet engine.
Right. It's hard to spot on traditional radar. But thermal cameras can pick up the faint heat of the battery and the motors against the cold sky.
Okay, so they help our drones see, and they help us see the enemy's drones. Now, what about the Golden Dome? This sounds like a sci-fi movie title.
It feels like it. This connects directly to their acquisition of a company called Amorphous Materials back in January of this year, 2026.
Why buy another glass company? Didn't they already have the Black Diamond tech? Was this just to take out a competitor?
Partly, I'm sure, but it was mostly about physics. Size matters. LightPath's Orlando facility was set up to make small lenses think a few inches across. Perfect for a missile seeker or a drone camera.
But not for space.
Not for space. Amorphous Materials can make large diameter optics. We're talking 17-inch lenses.
That's the size of a dinner plate. Why do you need a lens that big?
Space. Specifically, the Space Development Agency's tracking satellite layer. They call it the Golden Dome. These are constellations of satellites that sit in orbit and look down to track hypersonic missiles.
Hypersonics. These are the missiles that fly so fast and so low that traditional ground-based radar can't track them easily.
Exactly. They hug the Earth. The only way to reliably track them is to see their heat signature from space. But to see a faint heat signature from hundreds of miles up, you need a massive bucket to catch the light. You need a big lens.
And you can't just use a big germanium lens for that.
You could, but a 17-inch germanium lens would be incredibly heavy. And lifting heavy things into space is astronomically expensive. It costs thousands of dollars per pound just to get something into orbit.
And the chalcodenic glass is lighter.
Much lighter. So by using the Amorphous Materials glass, you save millions of dollars in launch costs for every satellite.
So the Amorphous acquisition effectively unlocked the space market for LightPath. It was the missing piece of the puzzle for them.
It was. It gives them the full spectrum of capabilities: land, sea, air, and now space.
It really is a comprehensive defensive play. But, and there is always a but, we have to talk about the risks. We've painted a very rosy picture here so far. But the CEO, Sam Rubin, talks about a 3 to 4 year window. That implies a ticking clock. Why is there a time limit on this success?
There is absolutely a ticking clock, and Rubin is very realistic about this. He knows that the China gift, that export ban on germanium, won't last forever. Or rather, the advantage it gives them won't last forever.
Because the competition isn't sleeping.
Right. The big players, companies like Coherent or FLAR, they aren't stupid. They have massive R&D budgets. They will eventually figure out a workaround. They'll develop their own synthetic glass, or they'll find new secure supply chains in Africa or South America. They will catch up.
But LightPath has a temporary monopoly on this solution.
That's the key. It's temporary, and that is why they're racing. They have to design in their glass to as many military programs as possible today because of those high switching costs we talked about earlier.
Once you're in, you're in.
If they get their glass into the new Stinger missile now, they stay in for 20 years. If they miss this window and Raytheon designs in a coherent lens 2 years from now, well, LightPath is locked out of that program for decades.
So the strategy is, get in the door while it's wide open, then lock it behind you.
That is the game. Lock the door before Coherent shows up with a battering ram.
Can they do it? I mean, scaling from a small R&D shop to a massive industrial supplier is hard. It requires a totally different skill set. Do they have the people to pull this off?
That is a very valid concern. This is where small companies often break. They get the big orders, and then the processes break, the culture breaks. But you have to look at their recent hiring. They brought in Mark Kaler to the board of directors.
And who is Mark Kaler?
He is the former president of mission systems at Northrop Grumman. This is a guy who managed an $11 billion business unit. He knows how the defense primes think because he was one.
That's a serious stamp of approval. He wouldn't join a penny stock board unless he saw something very real.
You have to assume not. He is there to guide them through the labyrinth of the Pentagon. And then operationally, they hired a VP of manufacturing who came from Luminar, the LiDAR company.
Interesting.
That signals a clear shift from we are an R&D lab to we are an industrial factory. They're bringing in automotive-grade manufacturing discipline.
Which they will absolutely need if they're going to be pumping out thousands of missile seekers a year.
Hmm.
So what are the specific risks then? What keeps you up at night with this one?
It's execution risk. Pure and simple. The risk has shifted. 2 years ago, the big risk was demand. Will anyone buy our stuff? Now we know the answer is a resounding yes. The backlog is full. The risk now is, can we actually build it?
Can they manufacture $100 million worth of complex systems without quality issues, without delays, without cost overruns?
Rapid scaling is controlled chaos at best. If you ship a bad batch of sensors to Lockheed, or if you are late on a critical delivery for the Stinger program, you damage that relationship, maybe permanently. You could lose that sole source status. They have to execute flawlessly.
And then there's the valuation. The stock is up, what, 120%?
Something like that, yeah. It's priced for a lot of success. The market expects them to win. So if there's any kind of delay in the Stinger program, or if the LBIT contract slows down for a quarter, the stock could take a significant hit. It is not a cheap stock anymore.
So let's wrap this up. What is the final verdict from the sources? How are analysts thinking about this?
If you look at the analyst consensus, it generally rates as a BUY on the strategic outlook. The fundamentals, the backlog, the technology, the regulatory moat are undeniably strong. But it might be a hold if you're a value investor who is worried about the short-term spike in the share price.
So you missed the absolute bottom, but the ceiling for the company has moved significantly higher.
That's a good way to look at it. The investment thesis seems to be this. It's a de-risked manufacturing footprint with a hand-in-glove M&A strategy. They were the plan B for the Western defense industry.
That has suddenly become plan A.
That is the perfect summary. They were the backup plan, and now they are the only plan on the table for many of these critical applications.
A tiny glass company in Orlando holding the keys to the next decade of missile defense.
It's fascinating stuff. It really makes you think about how fragile these global supply chains are and how immensely valuable the fix can be.
It's a great reminder that sometimes the biggest strategic opportunities are hidden in the smallest, most overlooked components.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into LightPath Technologies. Remember, we are just looking at the sources. You have to make your own calls. But as we look at this uncertain world, one thing is clear for LightPath. Risk defined, portfolio protected.